So I sent you like the little PowerPoint. Do you have that, or I just share my screen?
You could just share your screen. I think that'll be easiest.
Okay, let me get that open then. Let's see. Doo-doo-doo. Let me get there.
It's a good thing we started at 10 a.m., Mike, because you're outside and it's going to get really hot really quick.
Yeah, I'm looking for the share button.
Okay.
Hang on here. Not that one.
Mr. Alexander, there should be a green share button down at the bottom of your
Oh,
screen.
and there it is. There we go. Can we see this now?
I can, is there a way to make it just a little bit larger for everyone who's viewing?
Okay, hang on. Why is it doing it this way from beginning? Okay, do you see this now?
Yes.
And is the full screen? My screen is split.
It's split from how I see it, Mike.
Why is it doing that? Is there a way to, because I'm not sure why it's split. Okay, starting off good here.
We we can see
Maybe
the screen
try
pretty
that.
well.
Maybe
You can just
try
see
that. Maybe try hitting on the top right in to the left of the X.
Mr. Alexander, it seems that you're not in presentation mode with the PowerPoint.
patient mode.
Yeah, so when you go to the green share button, it should allow you to give you a few options. So when it pops up, it should allow you to see the PowerPoint presentation itself. And then if you choose that one, it'll pull up the whole PowerPoint. So the green share button within the Zoom.
And when I opened up that PowerPoint, all I see now is a few people in line. I don't see the whole PowerPoint. There we go. Share. Okay, explain that to me again.
So when you click on the share button, it's going to give you a few different options, right? So you're going to see all of the different windows open that you can share from.
Correct.
So it'll show you the PowerPoint presentation itself.
No, I think it's on my side. It's splitting the screen. And I don't know why it's doing that.
If you click the display settings at the top, and then an option will come up and it'll say swap presentation. Go back to presenting.
On my screen, all I'm seeing is share and then the different screens. That's the only options I have.
This is Meg. Even though it's not in the normal presentation mode, we can still see your slide nicely. So
Yeah, you just see that it's split.
yeah,
But it's okay. We can see your main slide.
That
There it
better?
is. There it
There we
is.
go. Okay. There we go. Okay,
Works.
perfect. Okay,
All
so
right. Whenever you're ready, Mike.
yeah,
Yeah.
starting off slow. Okay,
No, it's all right. We've all been there. So technology sometimes humbles us, right? And so
Yeah.
we're good. Don't worry about it.
okay.
Yeah.
So my presentation is about what drives the schedule for the public paratransit. Now, Sun Van and people that have a regular bus service, you guys know all about this. It's nothing new. But for some of the people that, it's their main thing is dealing with people with disabilities, and you might take someone out for an event kind of a thing. This might bring a little bit of light on what we do to provide our rides. Okay, so first you have to have riders. Okay, without the riders, obviously we don't need a system. So what's the point of having a system if you don't have the riders? Okay, to have a successful transit system, you must have the qualified drivers and office staff. For these employees to be qualified, you have to have operating procedures. Okay, so that makes sense. But we're going to go through here the rider dwell time, including rider type and mobility aids, different locations, the drivers themselves, office staff. Here's your operating procedures, scheduling software. It has to be adjustable to meet all the needs, and then maintenance, and of course, communication between everybody. Okay, so who's on the bus and how did they get there? We have general public, senior, and ADA. We have default load times. Okay, so default obviously is not going to work for everybody, right? We have different shapes, sizes, ages, and disabilities with varying ways to move around. You can walk on, you have a cane, a walker, a wheelchair, which can be electric or manual. And each person has a possible different dwell time for getting on and off the bus. Okay, you can set up a default time. Okay, someone that walks on the bus, maybe you set it up for 2 minutes. Someone with a wheelchair, okay, maybe it's 8 minutes. That's the default. Okay, but again, everybody's got a different ways to move around. So someone that can walk on but uses a cane, okay, maybe it takes them longer. So your system has to be able to be adjustable to allow for that. Okay. Same thing with someone that uses a wheelchair. Okay, we've got someone that uses a wheelchair and they can push themselves, and it's not that big of an issue to get on and off the bus. But what if that person has to use a stick or something like that to be able to drive their wheelchair? So your system has to be able to be adjustable to allow for that. Okay. So here's what we have for our default. So you have a wheelchair is a minute, a bike, you add another minute. Someone using a cane is 2 minutes. The lift itself is 2 minutes. A scooter and a walker. So there's all like the default load times for all these different things. So if you put some of these together, okay, you have a lift and a scooter. Okay, so there's 3 minutes just for that, plus the basic 2 minute load time. Okay, so it adds time to your schedule. Okay, so someone that's in a wheelchair, you can add the load and unload time to match the person itself. So someone, just your average person can wheel themselves on and off the lift. You get them up inside, you get them all secure. Okay, it's going to be a little bit different than someone that, it takes longer. They can't maneuver their wheelchair as quickly as anybody else. Okay, so again, you have to adjust that person to be able to load properly. So this particular person, there's 14 minutes to load instead of the default 8 minutes. Okay. Okay, so now we have adjustable locations. Okay, so the location might take a little bit longer to get someone that can walk, wheelchair, doesn't matter. The adjustable location is for the actual location time. It's not just for the person. A person might have their own uh, dwell time to get on and off the bus, plus the location. You can add time for the location itself. So that's what's showing here, the load time and unload time. There's an extra 4 minutes and 2 minutes to get people on and off the bus. Okay, here's another example of location adjustable. So that big kind of heart looking thing is the apartment complex that this person lives at. Okay, we want to pick people up at a door-to-door service that we have. So we can't pick them up at the front office. We have to adjust where this location is to match the apartment building that this person resides in. And I took it off the screen. You can't see it, but it has the building number and the apartment number. So that shows up on the driver's manifest and the GPS point that takes them to the correct location within the apartment complex. So we can adjust that as well. Okay, so again, I crossed off the names here. So someone that we're picking up at the origins, we have to be able to identify or allow the driver to identify who they're picking up. So this person, they know because of the letters we put after their name, they're ADA and they're PCA eligible. They're ambulatory, so they can walk in, but they're nonverbal. So this person doesn't speak, so you have to be able to know who you're picking up, basically. So the driver, the instruction there, the driver must walk into the gate for pickup and drop off. So even if driver's new, they know, okay, I have to go inside and ask for this person. Okay, so locations and individuals, we can put special instructions for the people as well. Okay, the next one on the bottom, again, PCA and ADA, visually impaired. You have to have the lift, but this person has a PCA going with them as well. So the client is in a wheelchair, the PCA can walk on. But again, they could be walking and it takes them longer. So you have to allow time for all these different people, allow for their abilities to walk on and off the bus. Okay, each road, okay, for us driving around Oro Valley, on an average, it's quicker than driving in Tucson area. So you have to be able to adjust those road speeds. For example, around downtown and around U of A, we've adjusted the road speeds to be 5 miles an hour for the whole area because of all the traffic, the lights, the people that dart in and out. So we slow it down versus up here, we don't have as much traffic, so we can get around. So it's all based on average time to drive from here to there. So, obviously if there's a traffic jam, an accident, someone's not ready at their location, it's going to slow it down. Okay, but we can adjust everything for an average time to get the whole schedule put together. Okay, and then we have peak travel times. Okay, so this particular road type that we've set up, road type 3, is 22 miles an hour. That's the base speed. But from 7 to 9 o'clock in the morning, we slow all of the road type 3s down to 20 miles an hour. Okay, and the same thing for the afternoon from 3 to 5:30, we slow it down again to 19 miles an hour. We have, I think, 8 different road types throughout Tucson area that we've pretty much done this to everything, that all the different roads. They all have their road type and speed adjustments throughout the day. The second part of this is selected street segments. That's how you do it. So you break out your map and you've got the map on the screen. You click on different roads and say, okay, I want this road to be slow. I want this road to be faster. And that's all based on uh, analysis you did of actual driving, actual pickup times, actual everything that people have done. You go through and you look at how long it took them to get from point A to point B. You look at how long it took this person to get on and off the bus. So you go through that obviously a few times for each little area to make sure that the driver can drive this route without hurrying. You can get people on and off the bus without them feeling pressured to get on and off, and without the driver feeling pressure to get from dropping off to their next pickup. Okay. To make sure that everybody's following the same rules, obviously you have to have standard operating procedures. Okay, so this goes for your pre and post trip inspection because you have to have the bus working properly. The lift's not working. Well, what good is that vehicle going to do out on the road, right? If it's not clean, if someone didn't do their post trip correctly, the person that comes in to do a pre-trip, the bus is a mess. Okay, well, it's taking longer for that person to get out on the road. So the post trip is equally as important as a pre-trip. Dispatch, what are they doing to make sure that they're helping the driver stay on time? Okay, so there's procedures they have to do to make sure that happens. And then obviously the schedule, the person putting this together, they're making sure that they're scheduling stuff that could actually be done. So when you put together your average drive time on all the roads, your average dwell time for each individual person, all that stuff starts driving the timing of your route. Okay, so capacity types for each individual vehicle. Well, I'm going to say not individual vehicle, but vehicle types. So we have 3 different vehicle types with us right now: minivan, the 14-passenger cutaway, and we also have a transit van. Okay, so they all have their capacity types. So that what this is saying for the minivan, we can get 4 people in the minivan plus a dog. We could get a wheelchair in there. We try not to because of the configuration in it. If you have someone in a wheelchair in the minivan, the way the securement straps are on the floor, the next passenger that gets in has to step over these straps. So we try not to do that. And we don't, but the problem is, someone says that they're not in a wheelchair and we show up and they are. Okay, so it could happen. Okay, the 14 passenger, yeah, if it's all ambulatory people, they all walk on. You can get 14 people on the bus, and then it starts breaking down after that when you start putting passengers with wheelchairs on the bus. So all this stuff is all driving the schedule as well. Okay, so we have maintenance. Okay, maintenance on the vehicles. Of course, you have that. You're tracking it. When are you having your PMs done? What type of PM is it? A, B, C, or even the 100,000-mile preventative maintenance? You have lift preventative maintenance that you have to do. So there's a whole bunch of different, basically Excel spreadsheets that we have that we're tracking the mileage and the lift cycle count, but also the client. Okay, the client might have an adjustment that they've gone through. They're usually, we actually have had a passenger that was going to dialysis, and over time he used to just walk on and off the bus, and then he started using a cane, then it became a walker, and then it became a wheelchair. So your system has to be allowed to be adjustable to allow for that. And again, every time you make these adjustments, it adjusts the schedule timing. Okay. So the next thing is communication. Obviously, if this stuff, if we're not communicating, the wheels on the bus are going to stop. And that goes from all the office staff to drivers, maintenance to drivers, back and forth, our whole program to our clients and the clients back. I mentioned earlier that the person didn't tell us they were using a wheelchair, and we show up with a minivan, and now they're in a wheelchair. Okay, so that changes things. So sometimes that requires our dispatcher on the spot to try and adjust different schedules from all the different routes that they're looking at to get people picked up properly with the correct equipment. So communication is, is paramount to everything that you're going to do. Here's a couple of quotes that we have in our training program. I think they're kind of funny. The second one, there's half the world is composed of people who have something to say and cannot, and the other half who have nothing to say and keep saying it. I really like that saying. Okay, that is our little program, but that kind of describes what we do or how we put together schedules. So I hope that gives you an insight on what we go through. And if there's anybody that we transport that needs any kind of special instructions, either for your location or for that individual person, yes, we can add communication for individuals. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate all the work that you put into this. I just wanted to open it up just real quick. If anyone had any specific questions for Mike before we move on to the next presentation. So anyone have any specific questions for Mike? See if I see any hands up. Okay. I think you got off easy, Mike. I don't see any hands up for questions.
It was
All right.
so good that everybody's just still mesmerized. That's what it is.
They're still writing feverishly all their notes down. No, it's very good. So very thorough. Thank you. I think, and I might be wrong on this, but I think was City of Tucson, were you going to present today? Or do I have a typo in my notes? Or Sun Van? Okay, I'll circle back. So maybe I misunderstood. All right, so I think, let me see if anybody else had joined. Okay, see Eric Geller has joined. So Eric, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's oh, let me see if I can get on here. So I'm sorry, it looks like
Mr. Geller, if you accept the promotion to panelist, you can share your camera.
Eric, if you just want to introduce yourself and say like who you are, your organization, and a kind of a
there we
quick
go.
overview of what you do,
Yeah,
and then we'll get you started on
absolutely.
your presentation. Yeah.
All right, so I'm Eric Geller. I'm associate director here at Easter Seals Blake Foundation. As far as transportation, we have a few different programs. We transport elderly people and people with disabilities in the community. We also have different programs, so work programs, day programs, residential services, where we are utilizing vehicles and transporting members with disabilities. Those could be physical disabilities and cognitive disabilities. Everybody's individual, and so I'll just talk a little bit about our training, what we do specifically. Some of the stuff I'm going to talk about is safety and things that come along as things we do because we want safe drivers and we want to have safe transport. But also the things I'm going to talk about is more about how we train to support the members that we are transporting. And so the first thing we go over really is that, and it's kind of a core to our all of our training, not just in transportation, but to all of our training to people that support the members that we provide services to. So that is that all behavior is communication, and that we have a duty to try to find out what is being communicated. So yes, there's unwanted behaviors. We see all kinds of things. Somebody might just be a little not themselves that day, or they might be having a complete unwanted behavior. And so we just try to get people to make sure that they keep that in mind, that they are trying to communicate something. And that goes for everybody. And so things to consider is that I started with preparing the vehicles. You just want to know when you're pulling up to a situation or you're taking a member out into the community. We like to really train to ask questions about that person's day. How long have they been waiting to get on a ride, or how long have they been waiting for a specific appointment? Are they late? Are they nervous, scared? Keep those things in mind as you're transporting the members we service. And so we are in a unique situation where a lot of our members are coming from a home that we also are providing supports or programs. So we have the ability to ask those questions. We have some insight onto what is going on in that member's day. And so really taking into account those things. Also, when preparing the vehicle, we go over where's the member waiting while we prepare that vehicle. So are they in the sun? Are they in the rain? Is it cold out? Is it hot out? Is it exceptionally humid? And what can we do to make that person more comfortable while we are preparing the vehicle? And then another thing to think about in preparation of that vehicle and the member boarding is their belongings. What kind of access to their belongings do they have? A lot of the people we support will come with backpacks or different items they have on maybe their wheelchair tray. And we want to be really careful how we touch those things, where we move those things, where we place them. If they're not able to be on the person, can we put them in a place where they can be seen at all times by the member? Is their view to those belongings obstructed? So keeping those things in mind. We also have the unique ability to know our members. So a lot of the people we're transporting, we know them. We have gotten to know them, so we know these things in advance. And then another thing is giving options. Is anywhere we can, we want to give options and choices. So within that, start with the environment of the van. Who is on the van? Do they have the option to sit where they want to sit? If not, can we explain that to them, and can we explain why? So explaining, communicating, again, is a two-way road, and we want to communicate if they can choose. If they can't, why can't they? So explaining those things to them. Same with the environment, the heaters, the cooling system, the AC. Are they able to control that? Are they the only ones on the vehicle? Then do they have the choice to ultimately make those choices? Are they appropriately dressed? Looking at how they're dressed when you go out, and is it seasonally appropriate? And if so, are we keeping the van or the vehicle environment appropriate to that season? Let's see. Also, when choosing where to sit, I'm sorry, I missed this bit, but when we're having them sit somewhere in the vehicle, are we aware of who else is on the vehicle? What is their interaction levels? Does the person they're sitting next to like to be talked to while they're driving, or do they like to be quiet? Do they like to wear headphones? So taking those things into account when putting somebody in the vehicle or assisting them into the vehicle. And then ultimately the radio and the volume. Do they have the ability to control the radio? Ask to change the station. Do they have control of the volume? If they want to listen to it or not? Are these choices that person has? Is the music that's being played appropriate for the group on the vehicle? So we train a lot to think of those things as you're setting up the vehicle for transport. Another big one that can be that we expect our drivers to think about is what's going on in the vehicle itself. Is the ramp rattling? Is that rattle going to upset somebody? Is there somebody who is sensitive to loud sounds? Is there a noise on the vehicle that maybe hasn't been on other vehicles? And not expecting them to understand that it's the ramp rattling, or expecting them that there's a funny noise, a vent is turned on that's not normally there. And the importance of explaining to them what that is. I recognize the ramp is rattling a lot, so giving them again choices on what can be done about that, or explain to them that it's okay, that we've checked it out, it's safe. Is it raining out? Is it, some of these vehicles we operate, the rain can get very loud when in the monsoon and it's downpouring. So thinking about those sounds, thunder, lightning, are these things that scare people? How can we go about mitigating those risks and those fears when they're being transported and it's necessary to go and not wait? So again, explaining those things, not just assuming that they know them, but that you're communicating constantly with the people that are driving with you or riding with you. And then we specifically go into how we're driving. And of course, we encourage all our drivers, and it's in our policy, to create space between the vehicles. I think this is standard in all transport trainings, but giving enough space to limit quick braking and limit quick departures from a light, your speed going into turns, your speed bumps, those types of things. That how do they affect the passenger? Of course, we want the driver to be safe, the vehicle to be safe, and their experience to be safe. But what also can that do to a person who maybe is anxious already, and you hit a bump or you have to slam on the brakes? How is that going to affect the person we're supporting in the vehicle at that time? So we go over a lot of that, those kind of things, and again, keeping in mind the people that we are transporting and how they're feeling during that drive. That also brought up, we discussed horn use. So a horn can be triggering, right? Of course, we may have to use them, but we want to limit the use so we're not overusing them, overstimulating some of the members that we support. If you have to pull over and get off to the side of the road and let traffic pass, or get into where there's a situation where there's less traffic, seek those routes out if that's going to help the person be transported. And all that also goes back into, we support a lot of people that use wheelchairs for mobility, and when they are on the van in a wheelchair, how does that feel? How is that different than sitting in a chair? So we actually, where we do trainings for our vehicles, we make sure that there's a speed bump to go over. So we have, what does it feel like when you're in a wheelchair and you're going over a speed bump? Reminding people that back axle is going to be a bigger bump after you've gotten over the first axle as a driver. The fast turns, the quick braking. What does that feel like for somebody in a wheelchair? So we ask a lot of those questions and try to get people to consider those things. So ultimately, I guess what we do in training is just keep it very person-centered. What are they communicating? What can we do to make them feel safer, feel better? And a lot of that, again, is just communication. Communication both ways, and communicating everything you're doing with the person. So that's kind of what I came up with. I know that's kind of what we do, or the pieces I pulled out of our training that help the person feel safer and limit some of the behaviors we see in the services we provide while transporting. Yeah. I don't know.
Thank you, Eric.
Yep.
I just wanted to open it up for any questions for Eric at this time. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hand using the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. I'll do my best to spot it. If I'm not successful in that, feel free to to respond verbally that you had a question. Well, Eric, much like Mike, you were so thorough. People don't have that many questions, so kudos to you on that.
Thanks, Janine.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for presenting. Let's see. I think Steve Nath from Hope was going to present today. Steve, were you still going to present? I don't know if you have slides or if you were just going to speak in a general sense.
Yeah, because we didn't talk about slides, so.
No, slides were totally optional, so no worries.
So
Got a little bit of an echo.
Yeah, let me read mine.
Unintended consequences of shared spaces, right? Two people from an organization attending the same call.
I think we have it. Is there
Right,
still an
sounds
echo?
better now. Yeah, go
Okay,
ahead.
cool. So we do a lot of the things that Easter Seals does. I think one of the things that we do really well with our staff is not only do our staff go through transportation training, so that's where we have several online programs that they have to go through. Once they go through those, then they'll actually do a hands-on training with either myself or Irma, or in the farther areas with a designated person at that site. And one of the things that we really concentrate on is what's the member feeling as they're driving in that vehicle, talking about going over speed bumps and things like that. If you accelerate fast and you stop fast, that member's flying all over the place, even seat belted. So we always want to make sure that we're taking care of them. The other thing I think that's really important, and I feel like probably is not something that all of the public transportation folks can do, is all of our staff go through peer support training, and that's learning how to deal with members in various stages of calmness or agitation and things like that. So it's the other thing I think that is different in public transportation, they get to know their riders, but we're working with our riders day in and day out. And for us, transportation is a means to get them to our program where we work with them all day. So most of the time prior to somebody getting on a bus or a van to go home, we're aware of where they're at, and we can take steps proactively to maybe take that person separately in a van or deal with the situation so that we're not having issues during the transportation process. We also go through past training whenever it's offered in the other regions that we're in. I think that probably being proactive, we have several PowerPoints that we use during the hands-on training, and then we do annual refreshers where we talk about little things like making sure that you have the radio station set before you leave and that you know where you're going, so that we're not driving distracted, dealing with things that we shouldn't be dealing with. And even having our drivers limit the amount of conversation they're having with their members in the vehicle, so that we're not distracting the driver from the most important aspect, which is getting the member from point A to point B safely. We do pre and post inspection. So we want to make sure that when they get in the van, they've walked around the vehicle, they're making sure that there's nothing leaking, that all the tires look good, so that we eliminate any mechanical issues that could happen during the transport. The last thing we want is for our members to be stuck on the side of the road in 110-degree weather. So it's another aspect of what we do is a lot of preventive maintenance, and that includes daily, monthly, along with the annual checks. And then every time we take it in for service, we have them do a safety inspection as well. So it's kind of overkill, but I would rather overkill on our inspections and not have somebody broken down on the side of the road, in the incredibly weird weather that we have on a regular basis. So I don't know if I have a lot that's eye-opening. It's really about training, refresher training, and reminding our staff, because all of our staff are drivers. We do have some designated drivers at each site, but for the most part, everybody that works at Hope it is and can be a driver. So we want to make sure that we impart on our staff the most important thing, which is taking care of our members, making sure they're safe, making sure that we're recognizing when a member might not be in the best place, and then addressing that prior to getting them on a transport and going somewhere.
Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate you bringing those talking points to everyone's attention on what you do at Hope to transport your members safely. I don't know that we have any more presentations, but if I'm mistaken on that, if your organization was prepared to speak to anything in the general sense or did have a PowerPoint slide, now would be a great time to go ahead and volunteer. Otherwise, we will move forward to the next item on the agenda. But before I do that, I do want to be respectful to Steve, and if anyone had any specific questions for Steve, feel free to raise your hand or ask them at this time.
Janine, this is Mike Oro Valley.
Go ahead, Mike.
One of the things that we go through, because we transport all sorts of people with all sorts of different disabilities or no disabilities. So we have, I would say, a hard time, but we have like a learning curve on how to deal with specific disabilities. So the question I have is if anybody has certain things for some of your writers, that if we could add some comments for individuals that they can help us do that. We have some that, it's better if you walk on their left side, or this person does this particular thing all the time. If we have that information for the individual, we can put it in their profile so it shows up every time that rider is on our bus. That helps the driver deal with this person better. So if anybody has stuff like that, I don't know what it would be. And even if it's individual by individual, that's great. Let us know what that is so we can help that particular person.
Thank you, Mike. I think those are good points, and it creates a really great segue to our next item on the agenda. But before we move to that, I think we can embed some of the solutions or ideas around that in the next section. But to your point, Mike, in serving people with a broad range of disabilities or needs, having those notes in a writer's profile can be helpful. And I think, some of the things that we heard from people that presented today would be helpful. So I think, like Eric had mentioned, just the acknowledgement that, if someone has, like, let's say a backpack, and it's really important for that person to have their backpack near them or in sight, or a reminder that if it's not possible to put it in sight view, that we explain well where it will be stored, that it will be in a safe position, and they will get it, back when they get to their, destination. And to your point, Mike, a lot of your riders might actually go to different day programs that are actually at a lot of the client-based organizations that are here on this call. So I think there is an opportunity to coordinate and not just share the best practices that we kind of touched on today, but also elevate the level of service through those profile notes that you had mentioned. And other elements that even Steve had mentioned, I think Eric had echoed it as well, is just really being cognizant of how a member is feeling, right? And what is the pathway to helping them navigate those feelings, and where does that lead in terms of potential profile notes, but also just setting the stage for how the trip begins, from being really intentional about those presets, like is the radio on or off? Is it on a particular station? Is that going to be potentially disruptive, not only to the driver, but also to potential passengers? And, the list goes on. So I think those are, that's a good question. So if anyone has any ideas or would like to connect with Mike one-on-one after this meeting adjourns, I think that would be a great opportunity. But for the benefit of everyone on the call, if anyone has some ideas they'd like to share now, I think that would be great. So if anyone has some ideas for Mike, feel free to raise your hand and I'll try to call on people. I see Tony. Hi, Tony. Sorry, I didn't see you earlier. I would have had you do an introduction. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I actually had gone into the office for the meeting and wasn't allowed in, so I had you on YouTube on the way back here. But I just wanted to ask Mike if he can share his contact information. I'd like to talk to him a little more about how he works in kind of a more rural setting and how things work long distance within his dispatch programs.
Yeah, and potentially even the folks from Sunvan might be able to share some insights as well. So if they're comfortable, I can share their contact information as well, so you get different perspectives on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. And just for the benefit of everyone that's on the call, can you share what organization you're from, Tony?
Yeah, I'm Tony Bruno. I'm the Associate Director here at Valley Assistance Services, and we cover roughly 2,700 square miles of southern Pima County, from as far south as Rio Rico and Santa Cruz County to Pima Mine Road and the Casino, Helvetia and the Santa Ritas, and down to Arivaca and Sassabee with our services.
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate you being here. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move if I don't see any other hands raised. And Mike, I'll make sure I get you connected with people we mentioned so that you can have a deeper conversation one-on-one. We're going to move to the next item on the agenda, which is mobility management and regional coordination. So here is just kind of a great opportunity for us to have a discussion around ways that we can actively demonstrate support for mobility management, increase relationship building within the working group, and of course, advance regional coordination, which is one of the main goals of the program as outlined in the ADOT guidebook. So some of the prompts, if you will, for discussion, if some people might be grappling with, what are some examples of mobility management or the ways that we can potentially advance coordination, or obviously within that relationship building. Some of those topics can be, the ways that we can make sure that information or around different services, transportation programs, et cetera, is not only timely but accessible. The way that potential referrals could take place, right? So if let's say a rider is using public transportation, but based on their needs, a loved one has identified that maybe they need an additional level of support, what does the referral look like? Or vice versa, if there's an opportunity to coordinate between a client-based organization and public transit, how does that transpire? Obviously, operational service provisions. So a lot of things that we've been talking about through these best practices are in alignment with that topic. And then, of course, the ultimate goal to coordinate services between public and client-based transit programs. So, so the first question at hand is really, where do we see the biggest opportunity to try to wrap our arms around elements that are tied to to mobility management and what might be kind of the low hanging fruit, right? So if we can't get to the desired state of it today, right? There's many steps to get to that desired state. What might be a first step, or what might be perceived as the biggest need right now in terms of how you see it through the lens of your organization, whether it be member-based or public. And through that, perhaps we can identify where there are some opportunities for this working group to work towards mobility management initiatives and obviously regional coordination. So I'm just going to throw it out to the group and see if anyone has some ideas in terms of what they see as the biggest need or the biggest opportunity. And I'm just going to kind of take some notes and perhaps ask some clarifying questions around that, and then let that kind of set the tone for a deeper discussion. So I'm not going to call on anyone in particular order or put them on the spot, but I do encourage this to be an opportunity for people to kind of share what they see as the biggest need or opportunity when we think about either regional coordination or mobility management, which are somewhat interrelated. So go ahead with opening it to the floor to this at this time. Let me ask I think I saw a hand or heard someone get ready to speak. So
Yeah,
go ahead.
so I'm just going to throw out as part of the discussion, Freeport-McMoran conducted a study in Pima County. They're about ready to release the results. And the fifth thing that they feel is of great need in Pima County is transportation. And they are working toward expanding volunteer driver programs for the senior medical population, finding medical shuttle services for possible all the way to Oro Valley. Oro Valley is actually mentioned specifically in the study. Developing partnerships with healthcare and health providers, and promoting options via community outreach and provider offices. I know United Community Health Center does some of those pieces already, but they actually have groups of people they've gone to and they've studied. The agency that collected the information is known as Bigger Cities, and they work across the country to promote bringing money into a variety of projects and programs. And this will elevate that discussion. And it's a very positive thing in developing additional funding outside standard resources for mobility management.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate that. Anyone have any thoughts or suggestions to the discussion based on what Tony shared, or just if we were to kind of reverse engineer the idea of what we see as like the biggest opportunity? Maybe sometimes it's easier to work through that if you kind of identify something that might be close to home, or what you see as like a biggest pain point. And through that, ideas are born. So I'll throw that in there for good measure as we try to add things to the discussion for this particular agenda item. And then Tony, if you have the link or any materials related to that study that you'd like to share with the group, you could send it to me and I can forward it out to the group. I'm sorry, Tony, I missed what you said.
I said I was sending it to you.
Oh, okay, all right, sorry about that, and missed it there. I'll keep an eye out on my email for it. Thank you. Right. Anyone have anything to share or suggest for this particular discussion item?
And Janine, this is Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, Tony, you mentioned you're from Southern Pima County.
That's
and
correct.
Yeah, possible trips coming all the way to Oro Valley. I know with our program, there's certain limitations about where we go. So how does someone get from Southern Pima County up to Oro Valley and then back?
Okay, so we are delivering clients to doctors and specialty appointments from the rural areas into Tucson. We recently have had a couple requests transportation into Oro Valley. Most at this point in time, we have 65 volunteer drivers, and we send out the ridership that we have for the day, and those volunteer drivers pick and choose the people they want to, or the trips they want to take. They're all vetted. They all go through de-escalation training. They go through everything everybody's talked about today. But in the future, we have been awarded a vehicle that's forthcoming in the next year or whenever it comes. And then in Santa Cruz County, we work with Sego, and we have volunteer drivers and a vehicle coming in down there. We are in some negotiations with the city or the town of Patagonia. They only have 4 drivers, and they have people who are going all over. And there's a halfway point that we can use our volunteer drivers to pick those clients up and get them into Tucson, and then bring them back to this designated point for the folks in Patagonia to pick them up. So we've got a lot of irons in the fire right now, but we've done this with volunteer drivers for a while, but we also want to look at some kind of dispatch program now. We're getting to the size that a spreadsheet doesn't quite cut it. And so that's kind of why I want to talk to you, is about how you're utilizing your resources and how you do your ridership.
Okay, yeah, we can do that offline, but my question or comment would be, being that RTA is for the region, they have oversight on the region. I think it would be good for everybody to have like an app or a link or something like that. For example, Tony, you send it out to your individual people that can transport people around. But what if there was a way that you can log into a program that they can get from point A to point B with a couple of different agencies, so that one person isn't doing the whole thing. So they could go from, point A to point B and then get on this other bus and keep going and then get right back, and they can see it all and know it's all happening without, well, I hope the next one picks up on it.
Yeah,
I know
I've
they
been
have-
I've been an advocate of joining forces for years with the 5300 vehicles. I worked in a couple places that utilized them in the past, and I see that sometimes we're making so many trips that we don't see who could support us, who is could handle some of the ridership. So I certainly think that there's a discussion there and some common ground.
Yeah. I think a universal link that people can go to book that whole trip, I think would be a huge help.
I would agree.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Mike. Anyone else have any thoughts or considerations for the mobility management and regional coordination discussion? Just to make sure I'm not missing. Mike, is your hand still up or did you have something else?
Nope, let me lower it. Sorry.
Okay, no, it's okay. I just, sometimes I do miss people and I don't want that to be the case. So, all right. Okay, so I think at this point we'll move to the next item on the agenda, which should be safety and training. And so if you're familiar with the fiscal year 2025 ADOT Coordinated Mobility Program Guidebook, there's lots of focus on implementation of safety and training practices for each, obviously, any agency that's funded through 5310 funding. And then a focus on proficiency, right? Whether it be for defensive driving or ADA, which is what we briefly talked about through different presentations and discussion points. And then, of course, something where most agencies are familiar with, which is passenger sensitivity and, of course, overall safety procedures. And so I'd like for this discussion to be rooted in kind of a culmination of 5 ideas and thoughts that you might have always had, or maybe they've come to the surface through certain things that you might have heard from the different presentations. Because I think we have an opportunity as we look at driver training as a whole throughout the region, that much like what Mike had expressed a little bit ago, and you can interrupt me at any time, Mike, because I don't want to be putting words in your mouth. But, you know, opportunities to like elevate our rider profile. And then through those profile notes that allows a driver to be set up for success and how to meet the needs of that individual. The way that that comes to pass is that driver has to be better trained on how to meet the needs of people with different types of disabilities, whether it be a disability with regard to their mobility, a developmental intellectual disability, visual impairment or blindness, hard of hearing or deafness, you know, and the list continues. Even people that are like neurodivergent, right? Yeah, or it might be nonverbal. How do we meet those people's needs? And people that might have, you know, anxiety or other needs that we need to address and meet people where they are. So when we look at driver training, for example, or passenger sensitivity, what is the opportunity for all the experts that we have around this table right now to bring forth something that they do exceptionally well and share it with the rest of the group so that their drivers in turn benefit from that wisdom or that knowledge? Because if the hope is for, like Mike said, one day, you know, there's a link or a tool that allows people to book a trip from, you know, one part of the region all the way out to another, and they're going to benefit from transportation services from a variety of agencies. The hope obviously is for it to be seamless, but also like the standard of care, if you will, to be the same experience. And I think one of the ways that we can get to that is if all drivers have a very similar baseline of knowledge and wisdom and insights, but also the right tools and available to them to be able to make that come to pass. So for this discussion, I'm just curious, because I know Steve also talked about some of their like defensive driving and other evaluation protocols that they use. Eric had mentioned just that awareness of, you know, what does it feel like when you're sitting closer to the front axle versus like the rear axle, little things, or things that might seem little to us, or to one individual, meaning like the rattling of a ramp or the lift, but to someone else, that can be very jarring or triggering. And a list goes on, right? Of things that can seem simple or not a big deal to one person, but can be very impactful in a negative way to someone else. We want to be sensitive to that. So how do we bring that wisdom, that insight into the trainings that we do with our drivers and our staff? So I'd like to open it up, and if you have an idea of something that we could do, or what could be potentially orchestrated to allow for that to come to pass. I think that would be beneficial to this discussion. And in the same breath, if you recognize that there's a gap in training, in terms of like you've attended past training, you've attended other well-known training programs, but your impression is that perhaps in one particular space, it just kind of scratches the surface, but it never really takes it to another level. And that level might be helpful, not only to your agency or perhaps another agency, that you would like to see programs that are rooted in that level of detail come to pass, whether organically through the working group or through other sources, such as RTAP or ADOT connections, et cetera. So I'm going to open it up, the floor to that type of discussion. So if you have any thoughts or ideas on that, that's what we're looking for through this particular agenda item.
Hi, Jenny. I don't have anything that's like earth shattering, other than we've been really lucky because we're in all the different regions. And over the years, we've seen presentations from everyone from Phoenix providers to rural Yavapai County. And I don't know how everybody else feels, but we've adjusted our program every time we've seen something that looked really cool. We're like, okay, we're going to add that to our program. And that's, I think, how we've been able to develop what I feel is a fairly good program. Is if you see something that makes sense, add it to your training program, because it's impossible for each of us to think of everything. But in today's day and age, you try to have to think of as much as possible.
So Steve, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot a little bit, do you have an example of something that you saw through another organization or whatever provision, and you said that's something that we can incorporate, and went ahead and did that?
Yeah, we MAG has a lot of they have their coordination meetings, but then they have pretty regular training meetings where different folks will do a presentation. We had a good safety training protocol, but once I saw their driver safety training, we added another PowerPoint to ours, which included, everything from statistics on distracted driving to reminding people, don't eat while you're driving, don't put makeup on while you're driving, don't. And it sounds like these are common sense things that you shouldn't have to remind people of. But we felt like I'd rather annoy somebody and remind them of what they shouldn't be doing rather than have that call that comes in and says, oh, by the way, I was eating my burger and this is what happened. So Justin, I can't remember Justin's last name, up in Maricopa County. He's one of the sub-regional mobility managers, does a really good job of presenting those different trainings. So we blatantly plagiarized one of his driver safety trainings and added it to ours. And we feel like that's been helpful.
So with that, do you feel like something similar to that in our region would be of value, where people have an opportunity to attend different types of trainings and glean from those so that they can choose what they would like to incorporate? Because to your point, it can't necessarily be, the expert in all things, but and figure out what those gaps are on your own. Kind of back to the adage, you don't know what you don't know. But when you see it, right, and you recognize like, oh, that's something that we're missing. And if somebody's already invented that wheel, you don't necessarily have to reinvent it, right? You can just choose to incorporate it or refine it. Do you feel like that would be something that would be helpful in the region as a part of the discussion?
I definitely think so. I mean, like I said, I think learning from each other helps with the coordination effort, that all of the regions try to promote. And again, it just, you might see something in somebody else's presentation or training that makes you go, or you look at something and you go, wow, I shouldn't have anything. You know what I mean? It just helps you refine it. So it's been helpful, and I don't know about everybody else. It's kind of a blessing and a curse to be in 7 regions, because sometimes we have a ridiculous amount of meetings, but also we get to see a lot of other people's approach to what we do, and especially the 5310s. We don't have necessarily the same pockets as some of the other transit programs, and so it's helpful when you see something that makes sense to incorporate into your program.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Anyone have any ideas on how we might implement something like that here amongst our working group or within the region? Anyone have any suggestions?
Janine, this is Mike. Going off of what Steve was saying, they have, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it sounds like you have in-person meetings to go over some of the training. So perhaps we start doing some of that for these working group meetings. For example, for us, our focus is on how to get people from point A to point B as safely as we can on time. But there's people that have different anxieties or different things that are going on that we go through, the past training, but it doesn't really get down to any kind of detailed instruction on how to help somebody. So if we go to, for example, Savvy or Blake that deals specifically with certain disabilities, maybe they can show us how to handle or how to deal with someone that's got an anxiety, somebody that can't walk from here to, whatever it is. But we go through very basic training because we're drivers. We've got a lot of different disabilities to deal with, but how do you deal with a specific disability? So I would think some of the agencies would be able to shed some light on that.
Hi, Janine, this is Sean with Sunvan. Just to jump into that, great line of discussion. One thing we do at Sunvan that's been helpful, and we've needed to expand this practice really, is to bring in persons with certain disabilities to speak with our operators at safety meetings, which we have quarterly. We have had one individual who has spoken to our drivers for a number of years. She'll come in maybe once a year and speak about her perspective as a visually impaired individual riding our service. And she has a handout that she gives to all the operators with a lot of tips for how to handle situations where you're boarding individuals, you're meeting them at the door, how to escort them, to the van, on the van, what to do on the van once you're on the van, those kinds of things. And it's been very, very enlightening, very helpful. It engages the operators. It really grabs their attention. And I think we need to do a better job as an agency of bringing in more persons with other types of disabilities, for instance, hearing impaired or what have you. So one possibility is if there's some kind of a coordinated training session, is to bring in several folks in the community representing different disability groups to speak to us, to speak to the attendees and just enlighten us and help us to understand in a better way how we can serve them.
Thanks, Sean. I think that's a great idea. I'm curious, what are the thoughts from people that are from different organizations about engaging on that level and inviting some of your members to come and speak to staff at Sunvan or town of War Valley, or, you know, wherever the opportunity might be an appropriate fit.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. If you get somebody that can come to you, especially at the group meetings, that has some kind of disability that can share what helps them, that's huge. It's a great idea.
Yeah, I just wanted to second that. I think I haven't looked at it from that perspective, and I know that at Easter Seals at our programs we work individually with drivers just because they're on site and we can see them and interact with them and show them specific things. But I really like the idea of I know some of our members that we support would love to get in front of people and explain those experiences. So I just wanted to second that. I think it's a great idea.
So on that note, would it be also helpful if perhaps we did one of the working group meetings in person at a particular location, which, you know, we can kind of iron out in the months ahead, and through that allow for a wider variety of agencies to be able to, you know, ask some of their members if they'd like to present. But then the next question would be like, or is it better served to have it done when you're doing safety meetings with the actual drivers, or both? I'm just kind of curious on like on a macro versus a micro view. Does it also make sense for those that are on the call to understand certain things first before segueing into the safety meeting at an organizational level, or just both? I'm just throwing it out there because one of the discussion items, so to speak, over time is, you know, how do we find the balance between doing meetings, you know, virtually versus hybrid or in person? And since this kind of has an in-person, or definitely has an in-person component to it, I'm just curious if it also makes sense to incorporate it into working group meetings. But
Well, I think doing both would be beneficial. But Sean or Eric, you guys do this currently. How do you approach you know, a couple of your writers to come in and do that? Is there specific guidelines that you want them to follow, or you just call them up and say, hey, can you come in and speak to our people? How did you do that?
For me, just to explain a little bit, we do that as Sunvan is one of the primary agencies that transports people from our programs, and so we just do that naturally on a they're coming in and they may need to know how to turn a wheelchair on and off, or how to work with a specific person. So we do that on site at that moment, but we haven't coordinated an actual training for that. Secondly, I would for our members that we serve, I would just want some prep time so that they can get familiar with the material that's being asked of them, or maybe how they would, you know, what would work best for you guys to have them talk about and specific topics, so that we can get that information beforehand so they feel comfortable. As far as getting them to come in, they're at our programs, so it wouldn't be a you know, we'd have to get Guardian approval, but that would be pretty easy for us to facilitate, to bring them or to have it here. I hope that answers my part.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Anyone else have some thoughts to what Sean and Eric and Mike have shared? I see Tony's hand up.
Yeah, I just have to say, we would be happy to travel to participate in that. And I would probably want to bring a couple of other individuals from my office. We're maybe a little different in that we have to comply to HIPAA standards. And I just wondered how many other organizations do. and there is training on HIPAA standards and how you get around that when you bring riders together.
Thank you, Tony. I think that's a good question. Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Or, oh, I see Stephanie's hand up. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Yeah, I kind of want to touch on what Sean said in reference to us, making our drivers more aware of the disabilities that people have. And one thing that we're doing in our safety meeting on Thursday is I am doing a sensitivity training with our drivers on how to deal with people with disabilities. Because over the last several months, I've attended several COAs and community outreach meetings where a lot of them, yes, they have disabilities, but they also wanted to be treated as a person and not a person with a disability. So we're going to be touching a lot on that, on understanding the disabilities, the role of us as Sunvan, basically not to put people in boxes, how to speak to them, all of that things along those lines, the do's and don'ts, making sure that our disability is more of an inclusion, like they're not treated differently. Along those lines too, because that's a huge part of dealing with people with disabilities. They don't want to be treated any different than anybody else.
No, that's a very good point. I really appreciate you bringing that up. And I think that's something we can add to the ongoing conversation about how do we, put this idea in motion, in the larger sense and build off of the great work that's already going on in the region. I mean, I know Sean mentioned what is already going on within his organization. So I think that's a great reminder. So thank you, Stephanie. And I think, Meg, your hand's up.
Yes, I just wanted to mention that, at the JCC, our program participants all have intellectual and developmental disabilities. And so when they go out into the community using our vehicles, they're accompanied by many direct service professionals or advocates that, have to go with them. Many of our participants are nonverbal. So that population may not be able to fully participate in what we're talking about here in terms of providing that feedback. But I do think it would be interesting to maybe, when we're thinking about people with IDDs, including maybe some direct service professionals or even their caregivers in the conversation. I think they might be able to provide some really informative information about the unique needs of that population.
Thank you, Meg. Yeah, that's a great reminder. And I think that points back to kind of the great balance that we can aim for, right? Like experts like at Easter Seals and Savvy and all the organizations that are on here, they all bring particular bench strength, but there are, members that might not be able to speak for themselves in terms of what their needs are or how to best meet those needs without making them feel, different, to Stephanie's point. But then there are people that are able to engage at a different level. And so how do we make sure we walk the line on HIPAA, but also give the agency and their support teams the time that they need to work with those individuals to prepare well so that they're set up for success. And then, of course, making sure that we have the right people in the room to benefit from that knowledge being shared. And then what's the best time or place and how do we make that come to pass, right? So if it's going to be very driver-centric or support staff-centric, how do we make sure those people in the room, and then where would it be located? And and how does that translate in terms of giving people the appropriate lead time, but still following all the protocols? But then, of course, making sure the scope and breadth of the discussion is in alignment with making sure that we're not putting people in boxes, right? We're treating people with respect and dignity across all fronts and making people feel different, but we are meeting people, where they are relative to their unique needs. So those are all good points. So I'm thankful, Meg, for you bringing that to our attention as well. And where's the opportunity to bring some of that direct support staff into the discussion? And Meg, did you still have your hand up from before, or did you have another point? Okay, thank you. It's hard to tell sometimes. I'm like, did I miss it? Did it go down and then come back up?
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. I try to scroll and see if I'm missing any hands or whatnot, and I'm human. I will miss one on occasion. So, all right. Any other thoughts on that? I think we have a really good start of some ideas and thoughts around how we can elevate safety and training. So I'm really thankful for those that have brought different ideas to the table, and those that have shared, here's what we're doing and what we've had success with. So I know Sean Mang and his team and Stephanie have shared, Steve Nath from Hope has shared how, they have learned from participating in different things across the state, specifically in the MAG region, and just all the feedback and guidance of, like Tony shared, about making sure that we're intentional about following protocols about HIPAA. And then, of course, making sure that we give everybody a voice. And one of the ways that we can give people a voice is inviting the right people to speak to certain things, but then also for those that might not be able to speak to it for themselves, getting the right people in the room to speak on their behalf. So how do we navigate that? So I think we have some really good starts for future trainings or future discussions, if you will. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move to the next item on the agenda, which is our mobility coordination working group goals. And so, and this is for the coming, federal fiscal year. I thought it would be an appropriate time for us to maybe not necessarily identify our goals today, but at least through the things that we have been talking about today, such as like a day where we might have some kind of platform where people can book trips and see all the different legs of the trips through various providers, to the training discussion and other elements related to serving people well in our region. That through that, maybe we can identify just some ideas of things we'd like to tackle this year, and make those part of our working group goals for the next federal fiscal year, right? The one that's coming to pass here in October. So, so with that, if we have some other ideas that we would like to kind of add to the discussion of things this working group could work towards, that's the spirit behind this particular agenda item. But also, if we would like to build upon what we've already been talking about as it relates to a potential goal, we can do that. And my hope is that we would have enough ideas, if you will, as a good starting point to potentially take it to the next level and say, okay, what else should we add to the discussion of a potential goal for this working group? Do we take a deeper dive through like a preliminary survey? And then by the time we get to our next working group meeting, we can actually declare what we want the goals to be for that fiscal year. So that's the hope for this particular agenda item. So I'm just going to kind of open it up and see what the group thinks on what the group thinks about what kind of things we would like to try to tackle in the year ahead. So that this kind of drives not only what we're working on as a working group, but also allows for greater intentionality on the agenda items, so that everything that we put on the agenda aligns closely with those goals, but also any other elements that might be prudent, such as like compliance related elements, because almost everybody on the call is either a current recipient of 5310 funds, or they've been a recipient in the past, or they're interested in becoming a potential subrecipient in the future. So we all have a vested interest in the compliance element as well. So it's not necessarily all that would ever be on an agenda, but it could definitely allow for some greater intentionality on what is on the agenda for future working group meetings. So, all right, so I'm going to open it up to the group for discussion on that topic, mobility coordination working group goals. And again, it can be rooted in things that we've already talked about or something completely different that we haven't necessarily mentioned yet. Check to see if I'm missing a hand that. Well, let me just put the it out there and say, as a general question, would it be appropriate to say that perhaps one of the working group goals, because again, we're not defining the goals today, we're just kind of making kind of a list of potential goals or items for discussion that could translate into a goal. Would it be safe to say that the merits of what we had talked about just a little bit ago about allowing there for there to be a bigger opportunity for us to identify ways to meet people where they are relative to their disability by educating drivers, staff, et cetera, either through individuals who can speak to specific things on how drivers could elevate the level of service related to their disability by just speaking from their own experience, or from direct service providers or other experts in the region. Would that be something that would be appropriate as one of our working group goals? As a potential working group goal, let me say that better. What are the thoughts on putting that on the list? Does anyone see a reason for it to be put on the list? How about that? Should it be something that's on the list? Jessica, go ahead.
I personally think it should be on the list. I really liked the discussion, and I know Christian Care Tucson would be really interested, and we would have a lot of residents who would also be interested in coming and discussing if we pursued that.
All right, thank you, Jessica. Anyone else think there's value in adding it into the list of potential goals?
Janine, this is Mike. Yeah, anytime we can add to our training on how to handle or cooperate with anybody else, other agencies or writers, I think is a definite plus.
So we have a couple people that have shared they think might make sense to put on the list. Based on what people have shared in terms of this discussion or this element was rooted in things that individuals articulate that they have done in the past or are currently doing. I'm going to make an assumption that they would probably find value in it. So I'm just going to, for now, I'm going to put it on the list, and then we'll see what comes to pass from the group as a whole deciding what the goals will be. And I think I saw Tony's hand up. So Tony, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a benefit to everyone, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Tony. I appreciate your thoughts. All right. Anything else that we would like to throw out for potential discussion on a working group goal? All of you bring such great expertise and knowledge about how you serve different people in our region. And you all have different programs in the general sense, meaning the people that you serve, but also you all have your own programs in terms of how you train your drivers or how you train your staff or safety provisions, et cetera. The way that you increase your knowledge, efforts that you do to gain feedback from your members or your riders. All of these pieces are, valuable for us to be able to kind of share or coordinate with one another. So as you think about your programs, as you think about the things that perhaps you just kind of take it for granted, you're like, well, this is what we always do. If you kind of think about those things, if there's anything that comes to mind through that and say, I think this might be something this group could work on together. Feel free to put that in the list for discussion. I will throw it out there just because a lot of the elements that we were talking about was definitely in the ADA space in terms of meeting people with regard to varying disabilities. I'm just curious, because training is such a broad topic. If there's anything that jumps out under like safety, that might be of value, or something that you recognize that you do exceptionally well in your organization to address safety, and that might be kind of the cornerstone for a potential goal. So I'll throw that out there as a potential prompt for increasing our list for potential working group goals.
Janine, this is Sean again.
Hi, Sean.
Hey, just I would just say that I think that it would be great to maybe add items that we all share in terms of safety, like for instance, mobility device securement. We've had some significant challenges over the years on occasion with issues happening. So we've kind of redoubled our efforts in recent months to really focus on mobility securement. It's something we take very seriously as we should, and it comes up at our safety meetings frequently. We have had campaigns, actually kind of revamped our securement process, not completely, but just added some elements that we think are helpful. So that's just one idea. Another thing that we do is we have safety blitzes on a regular basis, where our supervisors will be issued a safety item by the safety manager, and then they will take that to their team. And so our supervisors are assigned teams of drivers of up to 20 or 25 drivers. They get with those drivers and they go over talking points and have the operators sign those talking points. So just some ideas along those lines, but certainly, mobility device securement, I think, is one item that's pretty important.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Sean. I appreciate that. Anyone else have any other ideas for potential either topics under the umbrella of training or something outside of training that's still something you feel might be important for the benefit of the region and of course the working group as part of a working group goal? All right, I'm gonna leave that as it's to be continued for right now because I don't see any other hands up. And again, this is just kind of a starting point of seeing what ideas come to mind, but just these two alone, I think are really great places to start. Will automatically elevate the level of service across all riders, regardless of the transit agency serving them. And then, of course, safety is always paramount. So however we can elevate safety across the region for all transit agencies is definitely worth pursuing. So I'm going to leave it at that for right now, unless anyone else has something else that has quickly come to mind. All right, I don't see any others, and I'm just going to make sure I didn't overlook anyone that had joined the meeting. midstream and didn't get a chance to introduce themselves. I don't see anyone. Okay. All right. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and move to the next item on the agenda, which is the adjournment of today's meeting. So before we close, I just want to say thank you so much for your investment of time of being at this meeting. I really do appreciate it. Many thanks to all that did present today. I know it takes extra time to put those preparations together. If your organization would like to do a presentation on a particular topic in the future, for future meetings, feel free to reach out to me and we could definitely see how to incorporate that into the next agenda. But thank you so much for being here and being a part of the discussion. And I just appreciate all the work that you do across our region. And let me know how I'm able to service. So have a great day, everyone. Thank you.